Steve, you've been involved in the fitness business for a long time, and you started your career pretty early. What was your first job in fitness?
Well, I'd like to say that I've never had a job.
That's a good way of looking at it.
So actually, I would say my first exposure was through the martial arts, and I wasn't calling it fitness back then, although, fitness is certainly a large component of my.
Getting in shape was just an added bonus. You were doing it for the
Yeah,
skills themselves.
so I refer to it as physical culture. And,
Okay.
Each person has their culture. Through and through, I see myself as a martial artist because I started in the arts and I sort of moved away from the arts and came back to the arts. And that gave me the as we say, hindsight is 2020. So when you look back, you understand a lot more about early decisions. And so for me, I never really sought out as a career. It was something that was a part of me and who I am. And I figured out a way to earn a living and to have an amazing life doing what I wanted to do anyway. And I would have figured out a way to do that if I couldn't afford to do it. In other words.
So it happened pretty organically for you then?
Yeah. In other words, it wasn't the money that drew me to follow the path that I follow. It wasn't a business plan. It was, the martial art and the training. And then I got to an age where I said, hey, I'm not going to be teaching martial arts for the rest of my life as a career. So now what should I do? In my late 20s. But I was 12 years old when I started studying religiously, what I would say religiously, which is, 6 days a week for hours. And then
you threw yourself in completely.
Yeah. So it was something I did with my older brothers and my sister. And, from there I took it became my first career. I was teaching martial arts for many years. I started teaching, children and then adults, seniors.
So you said you were 12 when you started practicing. At what age did you start leading your own classes?
By 15, I started, kind of assisting to being in front of groups and teaching. And then by 16, and I would say by 19, it was, 18, 19, it was my full-time career.
So did you ever have any other jobs, or this has just been it for you?
Well, when I was 16, I worked for Marriott Corporation as we called
hotel.
So the La Jolla Marriott in San Diego, when that first opened, I was what you would call an aisle attendant. And then when I was 17, I was a host. So I did that as a part-time job, but I did a couple days of construction here and there because my brothers worked in construction. So sometimes I would, but basically I never had any other career. I was a student for a while. I was a full-time student. In my late 20s, I went to university. That's where I studied, sports science, got my degree in kinesiology. So I would say that aside from a few days here and there, I've never had really a job.
That's amazing. So you never worked at a gym, like a conventional type of gym ever?
Actually early on, so if I go over all the details, there was a martial arts. When I was 27, I realized, hey, I'm not going to be doing this for the rest of my life as a career. Because prior to that, I thought I was.
What changed that made you think you wouldn't anymore?
Well, basically, traditional martial arts, there's the story of the teacher and the student and sort of the parting of the ways where the student grows up and so it's like that break, that political breakup that occurs in, so many organizations and there's lots of tales about that in the martial arts, right? So, so it was that. So it was like, okay, my teacher and I, we came to the fork in the road, and now that gives me some illumination because there's distance there. So I realized, okay, well, that leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and I still love martial arts. So I continued to teach on a part-time basis, but I wasn't running someone's school for them. And I realized at that point that this isn't, for the first time in my life, in my late 20s, I realized, I'm not going to be doing that for the rest of my life. So I'm going to do something different. And then it was, well, what am I going to do? So it was, what do I enjoy? Go to the local, community college, which I'm very fortunate in Southern California. As far as as far as collegiate education goes, Southern California has exceptional community college
opportunities.
system. Yeah, just because the weather's so amazing in San Diego, and so you have world-class teachers that can teach anywhere they want. And so, hey, I like San Diego, so at the community college level, you can get some really high-level professors just because of the location.
Interesting.
Whereas they're maybe not going to go to, no offense to the awesome state of Michigan, but maybe they don't want to spend the winter in central Michigan, when they can get a gig teaching, along the coast. And so that's kind of, so anyway, so I started with the community college, and it so happened that fed in directly to San Diego State University, which is like the local university for me. They have an excellent kinesiology program. So it was a no-brainer. It didn't take me long to figure out, like, oh, okay, I can study sports science. Like, I've been doing this for, since I was 12 years old. So for 15 years now, I've been training. So now I'm going to go the academic route, and I'm going to get, some certification and kind of learn the quote unquote science that's being
I'm
taught.
curious, when you were in university studying kinesiology, did you find that there were a lot of people who were more into the academic side of it and maybe didn't have as much firsthand experience with actual exercise?
I would say I've always been an outlier, or, I would say that I'm a misfit. So
that's why I like you, Steve.
Very few, and likewise, as are you, and this is the age of the misfits, because
we're finally
that's
having our time.
That's a different direction. That's a different direction, and this would be like Joe Rogan format where it's a 4 or 5 hour conversation just to we'll stick at the topic at hand. I don't think I can keep
people's attention quite that long, but no, it's true. In my experience,
you will. You're just starting out, brother, but this is going to be massively successful because you're a very beloved figure, and people care about what you have to say because you live what you speak about, and that's why we have this relationship. And I'm going to see it at Athlean. I saw it. Check the website.
I'll be there again this year.
I saw
Absolutely.
that.
I want to come back to that in a minute, but I want to talk more about your kinesiology degree.
Yeah. Because it fell into place basically. It fell into place where, hey, this university here's got an excellent program, and I love this stuff anyway. But so now instead of I'm going to train for 8-10 hours a day.
Was it fun for you to be in classes like that after having spent so much time training all day? Was it frustrating? Was it hard to sit
looking
still?
Looking back, we don't call it fun, but you wouldn't change anything because it's not all about just having fun. It's about fulfillment. Of course, I didn't understand that back then. I understand that now.
Right.
But no, because you have the college thing. So you have the deadlines and the chemistry class, not so exciting, but that's a prerequisite for my degree, and or whatever.
I'll tell you, I have a college degree also. Mine's in an unrelated field, sort of. I have an English degree, and I felt like the thing that I learned most in college was just how to be a responsible person, how to meet deadlines and show up. And the specific classes didn't have that much real carryover into my life. Do you feel like having that degree really allowed you to be a better trainer, or was it just sort of you had to jump through this hoop in your mind? You thought you needed the piece of paper?
No, I think it facilitated the ability for me to connect with certain audiences that care about academics. So I can speak in front of a group of doctors, or I can speak to strength conditioning coaches. I did the CSCS. I did, the whole thing right out of college. Okay, what's the best certifications? Yeah. Oh, the CSCS, at that time, was it HFI, the ACSM, health fitness instructor, was kind of the clinical. So I kind of went that direction and just dotted the I's and crossed
the criteria. I'm the same way. I have a CSCS myself.
But now I don't use it. And so it's, to each their own. I think that this was prior to the internet time. This is still, I got out of university when I was 31, 2001. I went in at 1997. I was already 27. Most people going through the program are probably 18, 19, 20. I'd say the majority.
I'm a few years younger than you, and I graduated the same year.
Okay, yeah. So you probably went
straight
into
from
school,
high school,
Yeah. So, but it worked out. But yeah, in terms of the experience is what I value.
Absolutely.
Not the opinions of anybody, not even my own, because I know my own opinion can change with new information. Opinions are not, so no disrespect. Like, I respect academia for what it offers, but it doesn't offer everything. It doesn't offer the answers.
Absolutely.
And there could be a lot more humility. I'm not speaking specifically about
That's a very diplomatic way of putting it, Steve.
Yeah, because there's a danger in thinking that we know.
Right.
And
you close yourself off to new ideas when you think you already know everything.
Yeah. And especially in our area, like biomechanics is not understood. Biochemistry is much easier. Biochemistry we understand very well. Biomechanics is very, I'd say, nascent.
Yeah.
For the most part, there's practical application, which is just what are the best performers doing, and a lot of that is they're doing it naturally. It's not what they're being coached. In fact, the coaches often are unintentionally coaching the athleticism out of the athletes.
That's a great way of putting it.
Trying to do, but it's because they're sticking to the
science. They're over compartmentalizing things.
Yeah, and it becomes a boys' club, and I've never participated in that, but I'm glad that I have my degree because I have a certain amount of academic respectability.
When you criticize it, it comes from a more meaningful place because you've gone through that whole process.
Right.
I have the CSCS, and I can get geeky about anatomy and periodization and all that stuff, but I like to keep my teachings as simple as possible because I'm a pragmatist. And a lot of time it feels like trainers are just trying to impress other trainers rather than impart relevant information that the average person could get use from.
We live in a celebrity culture. There's the ego, which survival of the fittest and the dog eat dog, and so if you believe that, then it's like, what's the solution? You got to be the bigger dog, because the bigger dog isn't always going to be the bigger dog, right? So you live by the sword. Not in
every context, at least.
Yeah, but every context is, if it's all infinite, then it is every context, because the bigger dog doesn't get to stay the bigger dog. Like the alpha dog dies out too, right? So
eventually,
if the whole,
sure.
Yeah, so if
nothing
the whole
lasts
identity
forever.
is, well, nothing of this world lasts forever, but there might be the unseen. There might be an eternity that is unseen. And so that's really what my interest is. Not to be too far out there, because we have to be grounded, and that's
Sure.
our commonality too, is the physical body. So I'm in terms of if we have to stay in our lane, as the saying goes, well, my lane is the physical education. That's the lane that I'm an expert in, and that I've achieved a level of mastery, not in all facets, but in the things that I know.
You were one of the first people, at least as my understanding, sort of at the forefront of the modern kettlebell explosion.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the first Americans to promote it. How did you first get involved with that?
The history is, we know it's been around for several hundred years.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing new under the sun. But what we can say for sure is the modern kettlebell and the market of kettlebell training as an entity in the marketplace, and a bigger thing of like the fitness industry. So that we can very clearly.
Yeah, I mean, the whole fitness industry
that
is
was
a pretty
created
modern thing.
through Dragon Door, right?
Sure.
We know that the story that was created with John Duquesne and Pavel, and I was one of the OG, one of the first inner circle guys, along with Steve Maxwell, Mike Mahler, Brett Jones, I think Rob Lawrence, Nate Morrison, Andrew Duquesne. That was the original, and Jeff Martone.
Led you
Those
to
are the original.
To get involved with that? Where did you first see a kettlebell? Do you remember the first time you ever used one?
Yes, it was through the martial art, because I was getting the catalog of Vitalics. This was before they had the hard style catalog. It was Dragon Door's catalog was the Vitalics, and mostly Dragon Door. I had been a customer, for some couple of years prior to Pavel coming onto the scene, which was like 99, 2000. So, and they were basically selling, John was selling.
It was just Qigong books and products.
It was
at that
Qigong
point, right?
and martial art related. And, the martial art, I was studying Chinese martial arts. So I had also practiced in Qigong and Tai Chi, along with the more martial aspects. And so there was some books, I always would look through the catalog. I was a kid, teenager. So I didn't, probably at this time, actually.
Was this before you were in university, or was this after you graduated?
Yeah, this was probably, I was in my early 20s. This was probably like the mid-90s, I would say, is when I first was seeing the Dragon Door catalog. And I bought one or two things over the years. I think I bought a book by Stewart. I can't even remember, but it was a Tai Chi, Qigong book, and maybe one other. And I started seeing, and it was a quarterly back then. And I started seeing
like you said,
Pavel
before the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
You actually would read every word of that thing because there was so much less media, right? There wasn't so many things vying for your attention.
Yeah, it was really great just information that was pretty new and pretty unique. And you know, CrossFit was actually not even around yet, so that just gives some context.
CrossFit relatively new in the grand scheme of things.
Right. So even before CrossFit is what I'm saying. So. You know, and CrossFit had like one gym, the original in Santa Cruz. There was no affiliate. There was no CrossFit Games, right? So those are probably the two entities.
I don't think I ever heard of CrossFit till about 2005.
Yeah, I think 2004 is when they. It might have been before that, but probably they were incorporated in 2004. So you know, there was just Matt Fury. There was just a few guys that were. When internet was just kind of mixing fitness with internet and doing it from a functional training point of view, but the kettlebell is the tool that made all the rest of it possible.
Right. So you saw the RKC advertised in this magazine?
I saw Pavel's stuff and I said, hey, this looks cool, but I was just a kid, young guy, didn't have money, you know, teaching martial arts at this time. And, then I saw the kettlebell, and so I'd been in university. I was just coming out of university, and after training all day, every day for many years, for more than a decade, to being a full-time student, taking between, you know, 18, sometimes 22 units per semester, and then my first child was born.
Oh, wow, you had a lot on your plate.
Yeah, so, you know, between all that, I went from training all day, every day to being a full-time student, not training much at all. And I didn't like the changes that I was seeing in my body, you know, early 30s at this point. And so I was thinking, you know, I got to do something because, you know, I need to get back. And I realized, well, I don't have the time and I'm not in the habit of doing it. And so I have to learn to do more.
I can't imagine you ever really let yourself get out of shape, Steve.
No, you not weren't out of shape, but I saw changes in myself, and that was the criteria that because
you hold yourself to a high standard, right? So as soon as you start slipping a little bit, it was like, what the fuck? I got to do something.
You have to, because you have to be able to test it and perform with it. So, and I wasn't in that. I wasn't with my martial art, you know, my brotherhood that I had grown up with, and I didn't have that in my life anymore. And so that's right. I kind of went to university to fill that void. Right. Coming out of it, the other side of that is like, well, I'll do personal training. You know, so I did get a couple jobs, personal training. I was actually kind of hustling. I was training some NFL guys, and then I was doing one gym in La Jolla. I was doing another gym up in this other exclusive area.
Do you remember what year this was?
Yeah, so this would have been like 2002. So what happened, you know, 2001, I started seeing the advertisements for the RKC and the kettlebell. And I didn't bite on it at first because I didn't want to spend a bunch of money that I didn't have at that time. You know. And so I was still teaching martial arts. I brought the catalog on the weekends to my students, said, hey, this looks pretty cool, because I didn't see any video. It was just a picture and an advertisement where, you know, and John's a very good writer, so he was talking about the Soviet Spetsnaz and how the martial artists, you know, and strongmen would use it. And it just made sense to me because I would go to the gym during this time, like 24-hour fitness, but it just never resonated with me because it was too external, too social.
All about just looks.
I was coming from the martial arts idea, which is, you know, about the internal self-development and sort of a different focus, right?
It's a more shallow pursuit, bodybuilding. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, you could say that. You could definitely say that it has its value, but, you know, definitely we could say an external or shallow as opposed to the.
But that doesn't mean you can't learn life lessons from it, right?
For sure, because I think any art can be, you know, there's those that excel, but the ones that excel in that gym environment are going to be, they're kind of the martial artists of that world. Yeah. It's not necessarily martial.
I mean, anything that you dedicate yourself to at that level, you can learn the same universal lessons from.
It's a mind-body awareness, and it's not just the reflection that the mirror is showing you. So, but that's the exception, not the rule, at least in the 24-hour fitness setting.
Right.
Again, there's
So
there's not
were
even
you working
functional
with
training.
mainstream clients at that time? I know you said you had some athletes, but did you
What
just
I
have like
did
some,
was,
middle-aged woman who wanted to tone up her triceps and that kind of
yeah.
stuff?
So what I did was I was doing my personal training up in the more exclusive areas,
Hmm.
and so I realized that the gym was not the place for me. So I basically built up a clientele and started doing in-home. So I only lasted in the gym for about 8 months, and then I went into the in-home. So
When you were working
2002.
at the gym, you were an employee or were you an independent contractor? What type of arrangement did they have back then?
Well, Sporting Club Aventine, which was like a top place in La Jolla area, you basically were an employee where you got, close to minimum wage, and then you made your money by basically
By selling
walking the
training,
floor.
yeah.
Yeah, selling training, and hey, I can help you with that. And it's like, there's treadmill and
Prospecting.
all that. And it's like it just wasn't the right environment. And I don't necessarily even need those tools. In fact, I'd rather you just push those tools to the side and just give me the space. But it was a corporate structure. So I stepped into a corporate structure where you kind of, you get the bad shifts in the morning where you got to be there
Sure.
at 5
There's
p.m. and you got to put
a lot of
towels.
bureaucratic bullshit involved in any
Yeah,
sort of
so I
corporate job.
realized, after 8 months that wasn't the direction, and I was building up, slowly my clientele, but I wasn't a salesperson and didn't want to
Right.
learn how to be one for that.
So how did you
So
get clients as an independent trainer? Was it all just word of mouth?
yeah, I basically said to the people that I had that, I'm leaving the gym, but I'm going to do
Hmm.
in-home training. Would you be interested in
Right.
having me train you at your home? And because I knew, this was a wealthy area, most of the people have gyms in their home.
Right. But some of
So
them maybe like having a destination to go to. I've had clients who I trained in a gym and I said, hey, can I train you at home? You got a gym in your home? They say, no, I like going to the gym. For some people, it's just a thing.
gated communities and stuff,
Hmm.
really, really elite places where, you got a big mansion and you're
Right.
into.
It's not a New York apartment with a little gym in the first
So
floor
yeah,
sort of thing.
exactly. So it's just for that environment. And actually, what gave me the idea was I was training at a gym, and one person, he was like the heir to like the Sara Lee or something, Sara Lee pound cakes and all that.
Sure.
So he
Lot of
was,
money in the family.
so he wanted me to personal train his wife at their home up in beautiful La Costa, so I started doing that, and that's what gave me the idea. And so I said, well, I should get some more clients in this area here,
Right.
and so that's what I did. And so just going back to the kettlebell, when I was doing martial arts at the park, I brought the catalog and I showed my students, hey, check this out. This looks pretty cool. 2 weeks later, one of them shows up on the Saturday for the class. He has some kettlebells with him. This is 2002, so that's the first time I actually physically touched one. I did like a swing and a snatch, which I didn't have any instruction, but I was just doing it by how it looked in the photo,
Uh-huh.
and I could just feel it from the ground, and boom, from the ground up, my
It was
stance.
it was immediately a good fit for
Yeah,
you.
it was immediate. It was immediate, and then boom, I came up with the money, right? So I bought them a few days, 3-4 days later, or whatever it was, less than a week. I have
Hmm.
a 16. I did that after the first. Oh, and he burned me a copy of Pavel's. It was a DVD at that time.
Hmm.
So Pavel's first DVD. I had a pirated copy that he gave me, and I think the statute of limitations probably has run out on that. And
You got away with it.
yeah, and turnabout's fair play because my stuff's been pirated too, right? So
We all have been.
karma.
Anyone who's published anything that anyone wants to read, people are
Yeah.
stealing it.
Well, not the book, but the actual video, right? So I
Right.
taught myself. I started bringing kettlebell, then I got a 24 right away because 16 was too light. I got a 24. Then, a week or so later, I got a 32. So I had that was the original set, the 16, the 24, the 32. I was working with those, got a 12 and an 8 for some of the women in-home clients. I was lugging my kettlebells around with me in my car, and, medicine ball and a few other simple things.
Hmm.
And doing their, going to their houses. And then
How long?
2003.
Yeah, how long did that go on for? You don't still do any one-on-one training now, do you?
No, I'm not doing that. If I do now, it's expensive because it's not my thing. And usually it's someone.
I hope that's not how you pitch it to your clients.
No, I'm just being straight because I don't build my
Yeah.
business around it. But
Sure.
it's not that I don't do it. It's just that since I don't do it, if you really want to do it, well, you have to schedule some time for that.
Sure.
You know. And
I'm selective about who I train one-on-one, but I still do one-on-one training. I like it.
Yeah, I do on a rare occasion, but my scenario is more like someone emails me and says, "Hey, I'm going to be in San Diego for business or a vacation, and I'd love to train."
They've been wanting to train with you. Yeah, they've been following you for a long time.
Literally, it might be 6 to 10 times per year that I would do that.
You don't have anyone locally that you see on a regular basis?
No, I don't do personal training actually at all. You know, so even in that scenario, it's normally going to be like a half a day. If someone's going to be in San Diego, they're going to, book like a half a day and train with me. So timeline wise, 2003, I realized, this Pavel, I started looking on the forum, the Dragon Door forum at this time. Because I've been working
so-called Pavel.
Yeah, who's this guy? I saw what he was doing, and, something told me, hey, I can do that, and I should do that. And this Pavel guy seems interesting.
I guess you were right.
Yeah, he came out to San Diego for an event in 2003, and I met him there. And then a month later, I went out to RKC in Minnesota. And then that was April 2003. Pavel, right away, he's like, hey, you're strong and you can teach, and I want to invite you back, in June when we have our next one to be my assistant. And then in June, I went back, and he's like, I would like you to be a senior RKC. So that was the routine for a couple of years, 3 times a year, go out to Minnesota. I'm teaching the RKC group. So we would get, probably like it's been for a long time, we would get, 50, 60 people out there in the fields in the park in St. Paul. And so that's what it was. So I guess you would say it was like a subcontractor in that sense.
After a while, you broke off and started your own certification, the IKFF. When did that begin?
Exactly. So I became, actually 2008 is when IKFF was created. My first courses were in 2008. 2004, when I was with RKC, I decided to create a DVD. So I created Full Contact Kettlebells Volume 1, and then Full Contact Kettlebells Volume 2 was a follow-up. Later,
you had a couple books also, didn't you?
Yep. I did actually 2 books and about a dozen DVDs. So in 2005, I was contacted by a company, and I created, something that was really a monumental at that time, and even to this day. It was 2005, but in terms of the scope, 9 hours, 6 DVDs, 200 exercises, 9 hours of exercise instruction for $99.99, and nothing had been done prior to that, because prior to that, the DVDs were like, 20, 30, maybe 40 minutes, $50.
It was a whole library.
This massive,
was that a successful venture for you at that time?
Extremely successful, and it opened so many doors. It opened the global market, and so the feedback from there really is what created. Well, even before that, the Full Contact, not to the scope, but the Full Contact Kettlebells actually created a seminar market for me around the U.S. So in 2000, last half of 2004 is when I started doing seminars, around the U.S., Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, many other places.
You credit the DVD a lot with making that possible?
Yeah, that was the main thing, that, actually having a DVD, setting up the website, having some clips.
And then YouTube came along and fucked everything up, right?
Well, I don't know that it did. It's just I never really paid attention to YouTube. But what happened is the company in 2005, which I started working with, which at that time was World Martial Arts, and then created Shihan, which is the production company that I was working with. They're out of New York. Basically, they were doing a lot with the YouTube. So all the content that I was putting, he was putting a lot of little clips on YouTube.
You have a YouTube channel, though, with a bunch of videos on it. That wasn't you? Someone else handled that for you?
Well, I have one now, but back
Mm-hmm.
then I didn't have one. Back then, there was a lot of my content that were being put out, mostly by World Martial Arts. And then just seminars, people putting recordings of seminars that I was at where they record it and maybe put it
Right.
on the channel. So
The first time I actually ever heard of you was I saw a YouTube video that somebody had shared from one of your seminars where you were doing your famous jumping pistol squat. And that was when I
yeah,
was myself first started getting into posting videos on YouTube, and when I first started realizing that this was even a thing, that people were posting workout videos on YouTube, and I said, I want to get into this, and I saw yours, and I was like, whoa, I never seen that before. That's pretty awesome.
thank you.
Is that a move that got you a lot of attention?
It did. It did. That was definitely one of my signature. Probably, we all have probably the thing that we're most known for. So that would be the signature move. I have more than one, but that's probably the most.
More so than your kettlebell stuff. You think that's what you're known for?
Yeah, because yes, and because it was always associated with the kettlebell. In fact, Pavel again is the person that sort of myself for sure.
He introduced you to the pistol squat.
No, he didn't introduce me to it at all. Because that's a very ancient exercise.
You were doing them for martial arts already, pistol squats?
Yeah, I was a master of that long before I met Pavel. But the difference is, Pavel was the guy that introduced it to the American fitness culture.
Yeah, he was the first person I ever saw do a pistol squat, I think.
Yeah, well, he featured me real prominently in his book, The Naked Warrior, which was sort of his book where he was.
That was a groundbreaking book.
Yeah, exactly. So, all these little pieces, that certainly gave me exposure. My work with the kettlebell and dragon door, that gave me early exposure. My martial art training is what gave me the credibility, though, and that's the difference. And, so
eventually you said, I want to do my own thing. I don't want to be this guy's
it became
second
evident
in command or whatever.
Yeah, it became evident that there's only room, the best way to say it in this format is that there
you can say what you really think, Steve.
Well, there can only because it's respect. It's about respect, and I have a lot of respect for all the people involved. Of course, we're ultimately all self-interested at the end of the day, and that's a valiant position as long as you do it with a sense of fairness.
Sure.
But
and also, no one's an island, right? You got to have other people around you.
You can't have so many lions in the same den, and I'm a lion. and that's what it comes down to. So,
yeah. So
it's like if it's a glass ceiling, I'm not tall, but I can jump, and I'm going to hit my head on that ceiling, and I'm going to break through it, and that's exactly what it is.
Yes. Tell me more about how the circumstances that surrounded you starting your own cert.
Well, basically, there was a market now because I had created the DVDs. I had demonstrated a unique, my own, I don't want to say style not in the sense of a system style, but style in the sense of how
your way of presenting the material.
Yes, exactly. How I move, my unique interpretation of the kettlebell with the martial art and having that foundation to move from, and the kettlebell being a tool that is so complementary to that, it was an opportunity for me to showcase. And I had many years of teaching prior to that because I taught martial arts, so it wasn't a new thing, and I was fit in this, so it wasn't like I was coming into the fitness. It was a lateral shift from the martial art to the fitness, and the kettlebell gave me the tool because, like I said, I'm a misfit, and the kettlebell was a misfit because it's not a part of the mainstream.
Unconventional.
Exactly. It wasn't part of the Taibo or the Group X or the Jane Fonda or the bodybuilding or any of the things that, or even Pilates or any of the step aerobics or
I think
whatever
Dragon Door has always been an alternative fitness brand, and I think that's why I ultimately found a home with them as well, is because I'm kind of a fitness weirdo myself.
John DuQuesne's a brilliant guy, and he's done a lot, and I respect that, and definitely a thought leader.
Mm-hmm.
But where I was at that time for the
you were ready to do your own thing.
There was not the room for me to spread with Pavel there because Pavel himself is such a charismatic guy, and
sure.
So doing the workshops gave me more of an audience, and then doing the encyclopedia of kettlebell, that started opening up the global
book.
audience, and I was getting emails. Also the book, but even before the book, just the encyclopedia of kettlebell.
That was the name of the DVD series.
Yes, and then there was a book called also the Now, there was a book called The Complete Guide to Kettlebell Lifting, and then I did an app, which was an encyclopedia of kettlebell lifting.
It's a lot of irons in the fire. That's how you got to do it, right?
So it was kind of that. Those projects in that time were all very expansive. They were all, not 10 or 5 exercises, 150, 200, just big volumes of information.
When you did the DVDs, did you script everything out, or you just kind of...
Not in a detailed sense, not like the way a filmmaker would, but just in the sense of, okay, here's the exercise I'm going to do in this
more of an
order.
Outline than a full-on script.
Just teach. The same as if the camera wasn't there. It's the same as I always do it. It's like, this is the information and I'm teaching it. And there was no really effort or training that went behind trying to be an actor,
But don't you think that is an important part of presenting material, is the way you phrase things and your body language and the cadence with which you speak and all that?
Absolutely. And what I've learned subsequently is, again, but I guess the question is, what is the end result? If it's just about sales, then yes, there's a science behind the sales, which has to do
not even about sales, but just about conveying the material in as absorbable of a way as possible and simplifying and distilling your concepts down to ways that someone who's new to this can grasp it quickly.
Yes. Well, what I've learned is that there's different types of teachers. And
sure. That's what makes the world go around. There's someone for everyone.
So information, and that's what it was at that time in my life. It was information. So if you're looking for the information, then you want the good information, and that was what I was providing. Another category is a motivation. So a motivational. Now certainly from a video end user perspective, the motivation might be an important concern, but it may not be. It depends on the end user, because I'm interested in information. I don't seek motivation because I never look to others to motivate me.
But that's a big thing for the mainstream audience. They need the accountability. They need the motivation.
Mainstream fitness audience, yes. Yeah. But because if you're already fit, you don't need to buy DVDs to get fit.
Exactly.
In fact, you're not even watching DVDs. You're training. You're out in the park, and we're working out.
No, that's the irony of it, is that the people who spend the most time researching the stuff spend the least time training it. That's what I was getting at earlier about, the academic world versus the practical world. These people have all these degrees and all these certs, but they don't actually know how to move.
I'm not trying to motivate you. And if you're motivated by me, then there's something in the message or how I present it that motivates you.
I think you have motivated a lot of people, though.
Some people say, but so let me go through the 4. So you have the informative, you have the motivational, you have the inspirational. So there's inspirational teachers or inspirational content, and I differentiate that. The motivation is it pumps me up right here, right now. The inspiration is it leaves something with me that I take into my life, and so I keep it with me. So that's the distinction. And up until recently, I've always viewed myself as information and inspiration, not motivation.
Got it.
And then there's another category, which is transformation or transformational. And I believe that's part of the maturation process. The transformational now it's fundamentally changing. And the way we do that is through changing the thoughts, changing the patterns of how we think for ourselves. It also ties with inspiration, so those are the areas that I'm interested in the transformation and the inspiration via good information. And how do we define it as good? It's good because it's tested, and this what works for me. And so me and my life and what I do and what I am is the test and is the evidence that the information is good information.
Right.
Because this is what I do.
You're your own testimonial, right?
Exactly. So, and so it's authentic. It's real and it's authentic.
The
and
proof is in the pudding.
So to answer your question, yes. Those things are important, but we can't be all things, and I'm not trying to be all things. So,
sure.
For me, the direction that I went, it's the correct direction. I'm always looking to improve, but it's a different era now. So now we're in a digital, and the content is still necessary.
Yeah.
But I'm not starting into it thinking, okay, I'm going to do this project, and hindsight for sure gives us better vision. So if I'm going to do another project from here, I'm going to put more thought into some of these other areas because of the effect that the production can have.
So at this point in your career, Steve, are you pretty much just keeping busy with the certification? You said you don't do training anymore. Are you working on a new book or anything like that?
Yeah, so the main aspect is the China market as far as where I'm doing most of my live education.
You have a bigger fan base in China than anywhere else?
I don't want to say fan base. I want to say market base, because
okay, that's fair.
What that really means is that people in China are spending money on this information, on kettlebell information, and on Steve Cotter's workshops. So,
do you think that's a cultural thing?
I think it's a variety of things, but it's usually primarily an economic thing. So China is the superpower now in terms of the new economic power and in terms of the direction of progress. And that might be offensive to people, but I say it as a citizen of the world who has been around the world many times. And, we have to take the good with the bad and just be honest about the realities of things. Is in terms of fitness and in terms of kettlebells, for example, and even body weight conditioning, the American market is a more mature market. So there's more education. It's been around longer. The trainers are higher education, more current on trends and all that. And so there's not as much novel interest, at least not with the audience that I grew up with. With a different audience, yes, which would be the beginners. But with the audience that I came on with originally, it was more the educated fitness person that wanted to learn about kettlebells.
Yeah, I found with my workshops, we've been doing better in China than anywhere else for the last few years also.
Yeah, and they simply have a larger population, and they're willing to spend money. They have cash.
It's a fitter, healthier culture than America too, don't you think?
Say again?
It's a fitter, healthier culture than America. They don't really have an obesity epidemic. They exercise more.
I don't know that it's healthier, but U.S. is sort of
It's bad here in the States, Steve.
It's unique. It's a unique society of the world because it's not truly a nation in the sense that we're taught that it is. It's a corporation, but
the U.S.
Yes, but our food industry, China is not necessarily as good as they can be. I'll put it that way. Like the Chinese are less obese, quite because they historically, up until modern times, they've been poor, and so they haven't had the wealth. However, I'm seeing trends in China that I think are not favorable trends with regards to the mimicking of the American culture. Like,
sure, they love American culture out there.
What kind of metrics can we use? I'm not doing a formal study, so just observationally, what kind of metrics can I use? Well, location of things like McDonald's and KFC and Starbucks. When you see a lot of those, then you see the American influence.
And you've traveled an awful lot, and I've traveled a lot in the last several years, and I'm amazed at how much everywhere is becoming the same. Like you said, you see the same stores, whether you're in Beijing or California or Europe. It's like you still see McDonald's, you still see KFC. It's so weird.
Well, yeah, it's not a positive.
The malls all have the same stores, right?
It's not a positive, and I think that there's so many great qualities from the American consciousness and the American ethic, and yet why are we exporting the negativity? Why are we exporting? And I understand the answer to that is
money,
profit,
right?
and we're in a system that still values profit over experience and living. Well, I think China needs to learn from the mistake of U.S. because now they're coming into their own again. Again, it's a 5,000-year culture, so everything goes in cycle. They were up, and then they're down, and now they're up. They're moving up again, but it's not beyond that. It's not a nationalistic, like it's a global enterprise. We have to stop thinking in terms of borders. Like China is where I do most of my business now. That's where there's a strong market for.
How often do you visit China? You're there several times a year?
I'm actually flying there on Thursday.
Nice.
So I would say 4 to 5 tours per year is what I've been doing for about the past 5 years.
And then when you're not doing that, you just kind of have free time? Not a
I'm
bad
doing
gig.
in Europe. It's not exclusively China. I'm doing a lot in Europe. The other time is more my own studies. So I'm doing, martial arts study, jujitsu, lots of reading, so I'm real interested in my own self-development.
Right on. I'm impressed that after this much time, you still are so passionate. It's very encouraging and nice to see that.
Yes, because actually, we repeat the lessons when we don't learn the lessons. So the story is retold until the moral of the story is grasped.
Mm-hmm.
Once you grasp the moral, which is the principle, then the technique. You don't need the technique if you know the principle. The story is the technique, and the moral is the principle. So when you hold the principle, the technique can change, but your center doesn't change. And when your center is grounded, now you're connected. That's the gift that I've recognized for myself, and that's why I keep the enthusiasm, and that's why, because I love the hands-on. I love the hands-on because I think in the digital world, with the man and the machine and the singularity, and what's going to happen is the machine
There's
is
no
the
substitute for an in-person
enslave the man,
experience, right?
right? Is the machine going to enslave the man, or is there going to be this beautiful marriage where we learn to live peacefully?
Best case scenario, we all become cyborgs, right? Living in harmony with the machines.
We are in some level already.
Already, for sure. We all got our cell phone in our hand all the damn time.
Yeah, so ultimately how that all plays out, I don't know. I'm not the one that has the smarts in that category, but I have the smarts in, maybe you don't have your cell phone, and maybe you need maybe you need to get from here to there, and you need to struggle, and you need to get through some challenges. I can definitely help you be ready for that. You know what I mean? Because that's what I am. I'm a martial artist, and it's much more important than the kettlebell, because the kettlebell is the tool. The kettlebell is the tool that opened the world, but it's the connection. And, the techniques that are good for kettlebell are good for just about any other physical thing too, because at the end of it, it's use of your body. So
Absolutely.
You can't get really more primitive. What you're doing is primitive, because
that's a good way of putting it.
It's not the kettlebell, it's the martial art. The martial art is my first love. The kettlebell is a tool that complements it and allows me to teach martial arts to the masses who aren't martial artists.
There you go. Yeah, Steve,
exactly.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I got to wrap this up. Is there any final thoughts you want to impart with the audience? Anything that you want them to know about?
Yeah, I would say that, sticking to what fulfills you and sticking to what makes you happy, and actually doing the thing that you would be doing anyway, even if you weren't getting paid for it, that's the secret to my success.
That's beautiful, man. Well, thanks again. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome, brother.